All right, guys, so Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen did an interview yesterday with Jake Tapper in which she sat down to discuss paying for Joe Biden's Build Back Better plan, the inflation crisis, supply chain crisis, all things having to do with the current state of the economy. And when asked about how they're going to pay for the Build Back Better plan, because allegedly the Democrats are not trying to increase corporate tax rates anymore or individual income tax rates, Janet Yellen floated an idea that I think is far, far worse than that. Take a listen.
For months, even years, and as Americans look ahead to the holiday season, they are currently worried about rising inflation driving up the cost of many goods, a backed-up supply chain delaying their orders, and painfully high prices at the gas pump. Joining us now to discuss, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. Secretary Yellen, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. We have a lot to get to, but first, you just heard Speaker Pelosi. She floated some new ways to pay for this bill, such as a wealth tax, because it does appear that the plans to raise the corporate tax rate and raising the tax rate for top wage earners are out. With those off the table, can you still guarantee that this bill is going to be paid for?
As the speaker noted, we have a variety of different ways to raise revenue, and all in all, it should be relatively straightforward to raise the revenue necessary to pay for this bill. The final package, exactly what's in and out, hasn't been decided. That's being negotiated now.
Do you think that a wealth tax will be part of it, and can you explain what that would look like?
Well, I think what's under consideration is a proposal that Senator Wyden and the Senate Finance Committee have been looking at that would impose a tax on unrealized capital gains on liquid assets held by extremely wealthy individuals, billionaires. I wouldn't call that a wealth tax, but it would help get at capital gains, which are an extraordinarily large part of the incomes of the wealthiest individuals. And right now, escape taxation until they're realized, and often they're unrealized, and at death benefit from so-called step-up of basis. So it's not a wealth tax, but a tax on unrealized capital gains of exceptionally wealthy individuals.
It's only going to apply to exceptionally wealthy individuals, they say. That's what they always say when they're pitching these new ideas on how to steal your money. They also said that probably in 1913 when we first implemented or re-implemented the income tax, because at one point income taxation was unconstitutional until the 16th Amendment. But back then, right, it started with, well, it's just people making over $3,000, right, a year, which in today's dollars, I think is like $80,000 a year. It's just them. Don't worry about it, right? But obviously, when you give the government an inch, they take a mile. And I think that that's exactly what would happen with this unrealized capital gains tax that the Democrats seem to be considering in replace of other proposals that are not as popular. And I'm telling you, this right here is the absolute worst. Okay, let me explain why, right? First, we got to start with what is capital gains. Essentially what happens is that when you buy an asset, it can appreciate or depreciate in value, right? If it appreciates in value and then you turn around and sell it, then you incur what they call a capital gain, right? That is the difference between what you bought it for and what you sold for, right? And you pay taxes on that, okay? Now, you don't pay taxes on it until you actually sell it, okay? Now, what Janet Yellen is talking about, she's talking about taxing it before you can even sell it, okay? And capital gains, guys, that applies to not just stocks and bonds, right? It applies to your house, cryptocurrency, real estate, any type of asset that can appreciate in value is subject to capital gains. Now, to be fair, there are some tax benefits and some exceptions for homeowners, right, up into a certain income limit, I believe. But I'm just saying, in general, these things are subject to capital gains taxation. And essentially, she's saying that she wants to tax that before you can even realize that money, right? It's insane to think about. It's absolutely insane. And it's funny because you can also have capital losses. Is the government going to reimburse me for a capital loss? Okay. Are they going to reimburse me for a capital loss? I'm not sure. Pretty sure they won't. But I guess what I'm saying is, guys, that this is just another policy from the Biden administration that is there to discourage people from making good decisions with their money, which is to invest in capital, right? You should invest your money so that you can benefit from the appreciation in an asset, right? That's what you should be doing. But the Biden administration is trying to discourage that. They're trying to discourage investing into capital. And that is going to not only discourage individuals from doing it, it's going to discourage corporations and businesses from doing it as well, right? Why would I put money in a stock market or invest in an asset for appreciation purposes if the government's like, oh, we just gonna tax it before you even can sell it, right? It's already bad enough that they tax the income that you do make from your normal job. And then if you're smart enough to take that income, that post-tax income, and risk it in the marketplace so that you can build some wealth, so you can make more money, it's already bad enough that they tax it when you sell it, right? Now they want to tax it before you can even sell it. So at that point, who in their right mind would even want to risk putting their money in the marketplace knowing that it's going to be taxed 2 and 3 times, right? It's crazy. They're trying to punish people with good money habits. And because there's less of incentive to invest, that is going to steeply impact the market negatively, which is going to impact 401ks, retirement funds. I mean, speaking of retirement funds, they're going after that too, right? They're going after the Roth IRA, which is the greatest tool ever for the middle class when it comes to building wealth tax-free. They're trying to go after that, right? They're trying to go after that. It's crazy. And just to drive home the point here about how they're trying to punish people with good money habits, right? That, are trying to build generational wealth actively. They're going out to step up basis. Now, let me explain what that is so you guys understand. If I buy an asset for $10, right, and I hold it throughout my whole life, I never sell it, and it goes to $100, right? Upon my death, I can pass that asset down to my children, and then the cost basis, right, for that asset will step up to $100, right? Whatever the value of it was upon the day of my death, which means that if my children sold it immediately upon my death, then they would incur zero capital gains, right? This is a great way for people who actively are saving their money, investing in the stock market, right, to essentially pass down wealth that they accumulate over time to kids on a tax advantaged basis, right? Which is why I would encourage anybody just to put a little bit of money aside, even if it's just a small amount. Put a little bit of money aside over your whole life, purely just to pass down to your children, just to do that, okay? That way, when they inherit it, the cost basis steps up. And at that point, they won't incur such a large tax bill if they choose to sell it, or they can choose to pass it down to their kids. And it keeps going over and over and over again. That's how you build generational wealth. The Biden administration is trying to hinder the middle class from even becoming rich in the name of taxing the rich. All right, so that's enough of financial literacy 101. Janet Yellen also in his interview discussed inflation, and I wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit as well. Take a look.
About that because this rising inflation is hitting Americans' wallets hard, impacting everything from gas prices to groceries. When do you expect the inflation to get back to the 2% range, which is considered normal? 2022, 2023, when?
Well, I expect that to happen next year. Monthly rates of inflation have already fallen substantially from the very high rates that we saw in the spring and early summer. On a 12-month basis, the inflation rate will remain high into next year because of what's already happened. But I expect improvement by the middle to end of next year, second half of next year.
Second half of 2022. Former President Obama's Treasury Secretary Larry Summers has been sounding alarm bells for months about rising prices. Take a listen to his response to what he calls very disturbing inflation numbers out last week.
Now we see inflation becoming more widespread in a wider range of products, spreading to the housing and labor markets. I've been alarmed for a long time, and I'm more alarmed now.
More alarmed now, and Summers added this warning quote, "We're in more danger than we've been during my career of losing control of inflation in the U.S." Is he wrong?
I think he's wrong. I don't think we're about to lose control of inflation. I agree, of course, we are going through a period of inflation that's higher than Americans have seen in a long time.
I want y'all to notice, she admitted, hey, inflation is here to stay at least for another year or so, right? It might calm down next year, but, it is here to stay. Okay, so that's basically what she's saying in a nutshell, right? It's transitory. It's transitory. However, Larry Summers brings up a pretty good point. Is inflation actually under control, right? Can the Fed actually rein in inflation? Because, I just assumed, I'm like, okay, the Feds are definitely lying about when they're going to increase interest rates. I definitely think it's coming early 2022, at the very, very latest, mid 2022. But at the same time, do they really even have room to do that? Do they actually really have the tools to increase interest rates at this point? Because our debt to GDP ratio is the highest it's ever been during peacetime. Now, before COVID, it was sitting about around 100% of GDP, and then after COVID, it just skyrocketed to 120% plus. Now, liberal economists has been saying, don't worry about it. Don't worry about the debt. Don't worry about it, okay? Because our debt service payments were low, right? It's manageable. But the only reason that it's manageable is because interest rates are at an all-time low, which means our debt is cheap, okay? But once you start to raise interest rates, now all of a sudden, and especially with more spending that Biden wants to do, and you're raising interest rates at the same time to try to fight inflation, what happens is that debt becomes a whole lot more expensive, and we might not be able to afford to pay our debt service, right? Or put it this way, we may have to cut some social programs in order to pay for our debt, okay? Because interest rates are rising. So the Fed, in order to control inflation, they're going to be stuck between a rock and a hard place, because there's going to be incredible political pressure on them not to raise rates because of what that would mean in regards to our debt service payments going up and crowding out the federal budget, okay? And if we so happen to get into another crisis, right, or a war or something like that, we have to spend a ton of money, we might literally not be able to afford it, which is exactly what Joe Manchin was talking about, right? It's what Joe Manchin was talking about. So all in all, man, I look at it like this. I mean, look, we really got to get our debt under control. We really got to get our financial situation under control in this country, because we're headed towards a bad place where, the Feds might not necessarily have the tools to control inflation, and it might be foolish to assume that they just can rein it in with higher interest rates. Because even if they increase interest rates, debt has negative connotations in and of itself that a lot of people are not going to like. And if the Fed doesn't, stop pumping the gas on the economy with these low interest rates, then again, we could see a period of hyperinflation, which was what Jack Dorsey was predicting, or in regards to this global supply chain crisis, some stagflation. Who knows? I'm just saying, this does not look good. It does not look good. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.